Hello, I'm Gus Downing, publisher and editor of the D&D Daily. We're here today with Richard Frankel, Special Agent in Charge, New York Field Office's Criminal Division, FBI, and on-scene commander, Special Agent in Charge of the investigation into the terrorist attack on the Westgate Mall in Kenya. Mr. Frankel deployed to Kenya with a rapid deployment team and assisted the Kenyans in the forensic and intelligence investigation related to the terrorist attack. Richard Frankel was named Special Agent in Charge of the New York Field Office's Criminal Division in December of 2013. In this capacity, Mr. Frankel has overseen criminal investigations into organized crime, violent crime, offenders, and white-collar crime. In particular, Mr. Frankel has led a renewed effort into the investigation of Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, securities fraud, and kleptocracy. As a result, Mr. Frankel's efforts, numerous joint task forces with regulatory, intelligence, and law enforcement agencies have been established. In so doing, the joint task forces are able to utilize the individual authorities and abilities of these agencies to investigate sophisticated criminal enterprises in a more efficient and effective manner. In August of 2013, Mr. Frankel was promoted to Special Agent in Charge of the FBI's New York Field Office Counterterrorism Division. In that capacity, Mr. Frankel led numerous classified national security investigations. In September of 2013, Mr. Frankel was designated as the on-scene commander, Special Agent in Charge of the investigation into the terrorist attack on Westgate Mall in Kenya. Mr. Frankel was named the Associate Director of National Intelligence, Office of the Director of National Intelligence, in August of 2011 by FBI Director Robert Mueller and Director of National Intelligence James Clapper. Mr. Frankel served as Assistant Special Agent in Charge of the New York's Office Counterterrorism Division. While in this position, he oversaw numerous counterterrorism investigations to include the plot to bomb two synagogues in the Bronx and shoot a military plane out of the air near Stewart Air Force Base, the plot to explode a bomb in the New York City subway system, and the attempt to explode a vehicle bomb in Times Square. Mr. Frankel has traveled extensively for the FBI and has served as the FBI's Deputy On-Scene Commander in Afghanistan, where he led a group of FBI personnel who supported U.S. Special Forces components. Mr. Frankel was the on-scene commander for the FBI team that investigated the bombing of the rugby club in Uganda during the World Cup, and he also led the team that arrested the surviving pirate involved in the Alabama incident of Maersk ship off the coast of Somalia. Mr. Frankel has also served as a team leader, assistant inspector within the FBI's inspection division, where he was involved in 2 shooting investigations and 16 inspections. He was assigned to the New York office, where he supervised threat response squads within New York City and JFK Airport. Mr. Frankel was an associate division counsel within the New York Field Office, where he provided legal advice to the FBI employees on investigative and administrative matters, and began his FBI career as a special agent assigned to the New York Field Office's Gambino Family Organized Crime Squad. He's an FBI-trained hostage negotiator and has worked several kidnapping matters domestically and abroad. Prior to joining the FBI, Mr. Frankel was an assistant district attorney in Suffolk County, New York, where he was responsible for prosecuting criminal matters on behalf of the county and state. And with that, we'd like to welcome Special Agent Richard Frankel.
Thank you.
Richard, thank you for being with us today. I mean, we're here today, this is being filmed today for the retail loss prevention industry, and I'm sure you can understand why we're interested in hearing about your investigation into the Kenya Mall massacre. With 61 civilian deaths, 6 dead security officers, and over 175 injured, we here in the States are obviously concerned about this ever happening here. So our first question is, was there any indication or even hint that this was going to happen beforehand? And did they have any intelligence information, or did the embassy or the FBI have any information prior to this incident?
So related to this particular incident, there was no prior intelligence indicating that the Westgate Mall was going to be attacked. There is always intelligence going on throughout Africa, Kenya, as well as other countries on the African continent, where threat issues rise and where there is intelligence talking about terrorism attacks on certain locations. But with particularity to this incident, there was nothing.
I understand a few weeks before or a month before there was one on the Village Market close by, that there was an alert there.
Yeah, the Village Market is another mall in the area that caters to Western and embassy personnel. So that mall, as well as other locations in Kenya, have received information about possible terrorist incidents, but there was nothing specific, again, to this particular threat that we're talking about. Nothing that would have alerted them from the other threat stream that the Westgate would have been attacked, other than a general precautionary upgrade that I'm sure they did at the time of the threat.
Sure, sure. You know, can you tell us about your investigation? I mean, we know that this was a high-end mall, and obviously, as I indicated, there had been a couple of alerts recently and obviously ongoing. Can you tell us about the case and the investigation, what you walked into and what you saw?
So we were invited to go over there by the Kenyan government. We went there in support of the Kenyan government. It is their crime scene, it is their terrorist attack, but we brought certain abilities that were able to assist them in their investigation. We brought some investigators that worked with them on the case, hand in hand with their investigators, and we brought intelligence analysts that were able to work again with their people to put an analytical product together that would be used later in a prosecution. And then we also worked with them in the forensics. In other words, we went into the mall after the attack and were able to glean numerous bits of evidence that helped them in the investigation as we went forward.
Did it move forward with other bad actors or other criminals outside of the 10 or 15 member death squad that they had?
So in the end, what we've determined is it was only 4 actors four terrorists within the mall itself, and we believe there was a 5th individual who was a facilitator. And then we have other individuals who assisted or facilitated at a different time the case. So altogether, there were probably about, like you said, about 10 actors all told. But in the mall itself, there were only 4.
And it went on for how many days?
Approximately 2.5, but there was a follow and cleanup because the way the mall was, it was very hard to determine if those actors were dead, where they were, and so the follow-on by the Kenyan military and Kenyan police took over a day for them to go through the mall to confirm that there were no other terrorists at that time.
Now, I understand that they had collaborated this, and if I pronounce it incorrectly, I apologize, Shabab death squad, that they had collaborated with Al-Qaeda to a certain extent. I mean, there was some discussion about that. Has that developed any further? Is there any more on that?
Well, some of it I can't go into because ongoing investigations. I will just say that we believe that AlShabaab was the lead on this, and that there could have been or were discussions with other terrorist entities, and that those groups will work together when it suits their purpose. When they, when they need something that the other group has, they'll work that out and, act on it.
Obviously. I mean, is it possible for such a large death squad to really pull this off here in the States? What's your opinion on that?
So, could something like this happen? Anything could happen. I mean, we're an open society. We have many rights, and because of that, there are certain avenues that people might be able to get in on. In other words, could they go to a mall in a cosmopolitan area, metropolitan area, and do this? They could, but working with the FBI, working with its federal partners, state and local partners, working with private industry, I think we're in a very good position to try to prevent that at this time. We've worked with many different mall owners and other retailers throughout the country, in fact, throughout all 56 field offices, doing scenarios. So what would happen if this occurred? So if something like this did occur, whether it was this or a Mumbai-style attack, how would you respond? How quick could you respond? How could you save as many people as possible? So those are many of the things that we're looking at. Also, again, without going into detail, the intelligence side of our house. We are continuing looking at the threats that are out there and working them up without fail to see if there is any connection to anything that is actually active at this time, and that is a daily occurrence, an hourly occurrence by the FBI as well as all of its law enforcement partners.
How was the mall security itself and the police department? I understand they're relatively, they don't have the funds. Some of the cops don't even have cars. That the detectives ran to the mall literally on foot, and they stopped going in under the premise that they would have all been slaughtered, quite frankly. But how was the training there? How was the state of their police force and mall security there? I mean, in your opinion?
It's an unarmed force, and it is the security personnel over there. We're basically they're there to check to make sure that no one goes in with certain items, but they are not there to repel an armed group coming at them. They just don't have that ability. So when the attackers came in and started shooting, if you're not armed and you have no way to repel them yourself, they were able to get away and provide us information. Actually, one of the things that we were able to use from that was get the intel from those security guards that did survive. And I will say, based upon what we've learned, many of the Kenyan police as well as the military did go forward and go into that mall to protect civilian lives. So I think for where they were at that point in time, without knowing that there was no intelligence that the mall was going to be attacked, I think they did as good a job as they could at that moment in time. And there are many videos out there. I know there was something put together where they took all of the videos and put it into conglomeration. That really shows that there were Kenyans who went there to assist their fellow civilians.
Why 2.5 days? I mean, why did it take 2.5 days to resolve? It's a rather silly question, actually, but
they're going in against armed personnel. That I don't think they were trained in how to approach that mall at that time. I believe the police started, and then there was a handoff to the military, so that took time for the handoff, and then the military went through and conducted their clearing of the mall. So it takes time. One of the things that we've talked to them about, and we've talked about here as part of our scenario planning is, hey, can you wait that long? How do you go forward? What is the safest but quickest way to go in? And we're not only talking about malls, we're talking about schools, we're talking about other places of business, we're talking about military installations. We've had those issues here in the United States, and with every one, we try to gain some type of intelligence out of it on how we can better prepare ourselves here through our law enforcement partners.
Has that also been shared with other African nations about the response times and the need to develop your mall security and your police forces and drilling and such? I mean, is that going on in other parts of the world?
Yes, through our legal attache program, where we have FBI agents stationed throughout the world. These agents, part of their responsibilities are to work with the local law enforcement establishment and provide training where it can assist them. So in other parts of Africa, the lessons learned are provided to those other countries, and when we can provide them training, we do go in and provide them training on response to a terrorist attack or other types of law enforcement incidents. We not only do it with terrorism, but we do it with criminal matters too. We try to provide as much training as we can working through the Department of State to those countries.
And I would imagine it's picked up over the last year and a half, that effort and that program.
It has, but it was very robust. But over the years, under Director Mueller and now under Director Comey, we've expanded the legal attache program to many more countries. And by expanding that, we now have better relationships in each of those countries where we do have a legal attache. So it's not just a pass-through anymore. When there's an incident, now we have somebody permanently stationed there to work with the local law enforcement.
With the active shooter report that your agency released this past year, showing a huge increase, 16 incidents a year, what advice do you have for the retail loss prevention executives, our viewers, insofar as active shooter, terrorism? I mean, we can all almost be put under one umbrella. What advice do you have for the LP executive?
So to practice scenarios, to practice response. When one of these incidents, if it does happen at a mall or at a business establishment, the police response is not immediate. It will take, whether it's minutes, tens of minutes, to an hour, depending on where you are and what part of the country. It could take a while. So how are you going to react? How is that mall or that business establishment going to react in that time before law enforcement can get there? And then how are you going to let law enforcement know what is going on? Is it going to be everyone just shouting at one time, or are you going to have basically a command post already getting structured so that when the local law enforcement or FBI or other law enforcement partner comes in, there'll be a systematic handoff from the private entity to the law enforcement partner?
Is the FBI mapping this out as it relates to, you know, we're training this mall, we're training that mall, we're in this city and in that state? I mean, is the FBI keeping a record of this, and do they have a plan to where they're really going to hit the entire country from your professional advice standpoint and be able to input that? So to speak?
Yeah, so over the last year, we have gone to, again, within every one of our 56 field offices, we have done a tabletop exercise, we've done training, and then we've done actually a field exercise, so that in each part of the country, we have been able to do these exercises, and we invite everyone in, not just that mall or that business establishment, but we invite everyone in from that field office area of responsibility and say, hey, you can be part of this, you can observe it, you're a member of this training session. What we are continually doing is going back out and retraining with them. Also, if we get responses from certain police departments that they would like a specialized type of training, when possible, we will go out with those police departments and work in those malls. Again, we work with our partners, we work with Homeland Security, we work with the state police, we work with the local police on how the best to react to each of these incidents. And again, it's similar but different when you're talking about a mall, you're talking about a school, you're talking about a military base, and we try to work different scenarios in so that each of these different areas have some training, some basis for understanding how we're going to come in or how the local law enforcement is going to come in.
Is there any move from like a federal law or legislation to require the guard firms, the mall security departments and such, to be certified, excuse me, or trained for these type of incidents? I'm
not sure how that would react. I mean, that's a state function as opposed to a federal function, and really we do not participate obviously in that. Yeah. However, we will work with whatever mall security is out there to best determine the best way to either to harden that location, or how do we respond to that location, and also how do we provide intelligence to that location. If we do have information that, you know, malls are going to be attacked or a certain area of the country may be susceptible, it's our responsibility to work with state and local officials to get that information to those businesses so that they can better prepare for something that might happen down the line.
So a mall security department or a large group can come to the FBI and say, train me, show me what to do and teach me.
They can come and they can, yes, they can ask us, and then working again, and I say this over and over again, but it truly is a team effort.
Right.
We will work with Homeland Security. They have a very robust preventive authority that they can go out and help show how to prevent against certain attacks. We'll work with the state and locals, because those will be your first responders on scene. Right. We'll work with the ambulance corps, the fire department, and again, it will be a inclusive effort into how does a community respond to something like a mall attack.
Thanks, Richard, for being here today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Kenya Mall massacre a year and a half ago, the Canadian Parliament attack just a few months ago, and the massacre just last week in Paris are real-life reminders that the terrorist threat is real and right next door. Couple that with the active shooter incidents we see here in the States, makes our active shooter programs and preparedness even that much more important. So take the time this year to review your programs and even have a drill, because you never know who's going to walk through those doors. And as a nation's loss prevention executives, you have a responsibility to protect not just a company's assets, but also to protect the employees and customers of the nation's retailers. And with that, I'd like to thank you for watching today, and let's keep them all safe out there.